Shaker Celeste.
Team Romeo, you have 20 minutes to present your solution to the judges. You will be given a warning when 5 and 2 minutes remain. After 20 minutes, the presentation will be stopped immediately. No information will be considered after 20 minutes has left. Following your presentation, there will be 10 minutes question and answer. You will be given a warning when 2 minutes remain, and question and answer will be stopped after that. You may begin when you're ready.
Hello, and thank you so much.
Excuse me, do we have like a clicker?
I have a clicker.
Yes.
Oh, it's a
Is it just right in the
Yeah.
Just right in the Hello, thank you so much for giving us a listen. My name is Chris.
I'm Souvenir.
I'm Nibras.
And I'm Naman.
We're Team Romeo, and we're here to tell you a little bit about how you can implement automated technology to improve business both inside and outside the workplace. So before I delve into Mastercard specifically, I'd like to address the industry itself, the purchases industry. Now, in the past few years, we've seen substantial investment in automated technology. Now, if you take a look at this graph right up here, you can see 40% as of 2017, 40% of businesses in the industry are investigating potential automated technology solutions to current problems. And a little bit over 30% have already built solutions and used them in their day-to-day business operations. However, as the speed of these transactions and processes increase, there's also an increasing pose of risk. That's fraud. Because the faster these transactions happen, the less time there is for traditional AI and human supervisors to track down fraudulent activity. Some applications that are commonly used, most popular is customer service, back office operations, financial advisors, fraud detection, and risk management. Now, Mastercard specifically is not specifically a domestic US company. We're talking global. We have there's 210 companies dealing with 150 currencies. But the most important thing is Mastercard is a company that's got a goal, a world beyond cash.
Technical difficulties. We press play. I could link some PowerPoints through this.
Don't let cash get in the way. With your debit Mastercard, you enjoy less hassle and more convenience the cashless way. Call your bank today to get your debit Mastercard.
Every day, everywhere, we use our technology and expertise to make payments safe, simple, and smart. Automated technology can be applied to these three virtues, I like to say. Safe, to increase security, not only for our customers, or the company's customers' funds, but their identities. Simple, so people of all sorts can easily access their financial statistics, balances, and any other thing they might be interested in, such as spending habits. And smart, simplifying workplace activities. Everything from front of the office, where we're talking about customer interactions, like Mastercard CUIBE, the AI bot currently in implementation, and back to office. I like to think of reporting, data entry, redundant tasks that keep employees from dealing with clients and promoting branding and company public image.
We need more automation, I guess.
However, when trying to implement such automated technologies, there are several challenges that are presented. Now, one of the biggest turnoffs for several business owners when considering implementing automated technology is the high cost of it. And so, like any good economics knowledge person would do, you would do a cost-benefits analysis. However, the implicit benefits, obviously there's the explicit benefit of reduced expenses with human capital. However, there are implicit benefits which are significant enough to be addressed, but cannot necessarily be quantified. I like to think of everything from time saved for our employees, like I said previously, data entry, to customer satisfaction. How well is our AI or our automated technology oriented to their needs? Another huge problem to deal with is accurately targeting fraudulent transactions. Generally, what is currently implemented and in use to monitor transactions is traditional AI that monitors spending habits. So when I go to Starbucks every Friday back in Virginia, it's okay. But when I came to St. Louis and went to Dunkin' Donuts to buy medium coffee, my card was actually declined.
No way.
I am not joking. It was very upsetting. It was a very bad morning.
We'll talk.
We will. We can relate. But as aforementioned, we need this AI, automated technology can be taken above and outside of the US. I mean, consider the acquisitions and subsidiaries that is owned by Mastercard. I like to think of UK, excuse me, I'm sorry. But the whole idea is not only to implement this locally in the United States, but to engage that four-party ecosystem that is being maintained by Mastercard across the world in this constantly globalized economy.
So that brings us to our problem statement. How can MasterCard improve its market position and value proposition by integrating these modern automation techniques? So we'll delve into that with our first option, blockchain. So in 2019, payment fraud worldwide was about $24 billion, and the US accounts for almost 40% of that. That number is expected to rise to $34 billion by 2022. Why is that? Because a lot of your fraud prevention techniques still use outdated legacy systems like EPS, which sort of ranks each transaction and tries to determine whether it's fraudulent or not, or just geolocation, where if your transaction is outside a certain geographical area, they think it's fraud. But there are many ways around these things. Like, you can use any sort of simple computer algorithm to sort of bypass these securities and cause fraud. Not only that, but the new Payment Systems Directive in the European Union that is aimed to allow third parties to access bank APIs makes this even a more dangerous situation. So why did the European Union do this? So they sort of wanted to take power away from banks and give it to more third parties that could bring more innovation into the finance sector, because a lot of people wouldn't really buy financial products across borders in the EU, even if maybe you could save some money on it, just the legal barriers and whatnot. So this was a good initiative by them, but by giving these third parties access to your private data, the bank's data structure, you sort of open up a gateway for more fraud in the future. So how do you address this? Blockchain technology. So how blockchain basically works, and I'm not a computer person, so I'll try to give you my simplified version of it. You essentially have a block of data, and this data has a unique hash, which is like your fingerprint. It's unique to it. Anytime change is made to the data, the hash gets updated, and it has a new hash number. So if anyone tries to tamper with the data, automatically the hash updates. Not only that particular hash, but every other block in the chain all have to update. So it can't be that you change one block and you think you're going to get away with it, because every other subsequent block will not match the hash. So this makes it a lot easier to detect fraud. Not only that, but blockchain uses a P2P network. So I count 12 people in this room. 6 people have to approve the transaction for it to be accepted. If less than 50% don't accept it, then you flag that. That could be a fraud. This makes it a lot easier for you to identify fraud in real time. And that also gives you a lot more insight, more information about what hackers are doing, what they're targeting, what techniques they're using, and you can use that in your own AI systems to continuously learn from that and improve your overall security measure. But obviously blockchain does have some potential drawbacks. Could be costly to implement, transaction costs could be high, and it's not free from human error. But blockchain would make a significant improvement to the system. As you can see here from this chart, in terms of blockchain adoption, financial services are 23%. In fact, Mastercard currently already works with this startup called Everledger to track and protect valuables like diamonds, gold, and anything sort of like that using blockchain. And that ties up into the mission statement, security. You have more security, you have a more reliable service. More people will be willing to use it. You can target that to a lot of these third world countries where people still use cash because they don't really trust cards. So that could be a potential pathway going forward.
I'm a resident assistant in my college, and I spend my money, my personal money, for programs that I have to conduct for my hallmates. So it is really a hassle because I have to plan for further, and I have to be prepared for it. And it's generally not a good thing because I have to wait for 2 or 3 weeks to get reimbursements from the college. It's really a hassle. So this problem can also be transferred to business organizations, to B2B transactions. So there is this huge lack of confidence and doubt over, there is this thought of mistrust and lack of security when it comes to credit cards. So employers do not want to give their employees credit cards because they can be misused, or someone else can maybe take a screenshot and later on it can be misused. Enter virtual card, our second alternative. It is a very innovative way of solving the problem. The fortunate thing is virtual cards already exist and Mastercard has implemented them. It came out in 2009. What our approach is to re-innovate it in a way and change it in such a way and advertise it strongly, because there are a lot of people who want to actually use this market but are not aware of it. Like banks do not want to use checks, but they still, sorry, not banks, my bad. Businesses are worried of using checks because it takes a long time. But virtual cards solve these problems.
And not only this, but you also need to consider the business-vendor relationship here. Now, I could take out my phone right now, make a transfer on Bank of America, wherever my bank is. My grandparents insist on going to the bank, and it's acceptable. Say there's tons of fraud. We mentioned statistics earlier. Now, the cool thing about this is the vendor does not have to give out a routing number, account information. This virtual card can be taken and go right into their general ledger, applied, without the vendor risking any sort of critical information.
And the biggest advantage of these virtual cards is that I'm a corporation. I can issue these one-time use cards to be used for a specific vendor. Now, suppose I'm an employee, I would not be able to use it. Suppose I want to book a flight using Delta. The corporation would issue this virtual card such that they can be only used for Delta, and I will not be able to use it for other personal expenses. So this would reduce fraudulent transactions. And another good thing about this would be, suppose I'm using it at another vendor, this card will automatically self-destruct and will not be able to be used again.
You get trusted partnership, 2 key values of MasterCard.
And there is no fear of losing this card. I mean, it comes to your email virtually. We use the automated framework, which basically comes to the email. So if even by chance, it is a very low chance compared to real credit cards numbers being stolen. If by chance a hacker tends to get this number, he still only has access to a limited amount of money.
Simple, right? Part of the mission statement again, secure, simple. Now let's go into something a little more complicated, or as we like to call it these days, smart. So RTP stands for conveniently real-time payments and real-time processing. So B2B transactions on average take 1 to 2 business days to clear. And in the business world, time is money. We're never happy. We want everything bigger, better, faster. So how can we get faster payments? Well, this is when real-time processing comes in. So what is real-time processing? It's basically a system where there's a continuous flow of data input. It's being processed, it's being stored into databases, indices, and being used. The whole thing is happening 24/7. So the insights, the patterns you get from that are all in real time, and that allow you to sort of assess market trends and get ahead of your competitors. This is something that is being used more and more these days, but it is a relatively new technology and more people are still innovating on it. But one of the key benefits from this could be towards smaller businesses, because smaller businesses are more likely to have liquidity issues. Say for example, you're a small vendor and you need $200, someone owes you that, and you need it to buy your supplies for the next day. But the check hasn't cleared yet and the funds are still on hold. What do? You stop your business? No, we can't do that. A bank in Mexico actually have managed to speed up the processing time to 20 seconds for low value transactions. 20 seconds, that's all it takes for it to clear, money go to your account. And this will increase the volume of transactions. If, for example, say you need to send a friend $100, but say you make $20 a day, Just send $20 every day. You get it in 20 seconds. And it's faster time of transactions, reduced transaction costs. So overall, just makes the system a lot more efficient. So Mastercard has already invested in a company that does this. They acquired VocaLink in 2016, a UK-based RTP company. And with the help of VocaLink, Mastercard has helped the clearinghouse, which is an assortment of all the top banks in the US, set up their RTP infrastructure. And when everything's set up, it just makes faster transactions between banks, and the system becomes a lot more attractive. So now that the US has seen this, and it's been sort of a pilot program here, I think it's ready for a global rollout.
So we've given each one of our alternatives their due diligence, and we came up with a matrix for deciding our decision. Now what we did was we took 6 factors and gave them each weight, dependent on company goals and problems. Now we also did a rating scale 1 through 5. 1 being least desirable or least favorable, and 5 being of utmost priority or most favorable.
And as you can see from the weights, RTP has scored 4.15, the highest of the lot, scoring 5 in employee engagement because it frees up employees to do more productive tasks, such as interacting with customers, creating more value, more benefits as your system becomes more efficient and more secure. And obviously, you can have great scaling capabilities. You can use that system for anything from payment processing to processing social media trends and anything like that. And that is why we recommend going with this RTP strategy. Why? Because the industry is already geared towards RTP. You can see from the statistics here that 33% of companies think that they want RTP. It's the most valuable thing they can implement within the next 3 years. And there's also a push from the central banks. Why is this? Because cash costs the European Union 1% of GDP annually and 200,000 to the Federal Reserve. So a cashless system is within the best interest of the government. And if you have this RTP system set up, it can create a bandwagon effect. As more people get on it, the system gets bigger and better.
Now this can be a boon or a bane, right? Because you can transfer money in a matter of seconds. Now people can launder money very easily, and people can, just send money to terrorist organizations. What exists to stop that? Now, as Nibras earlier said, in 2016, Mastercard acquired VocaLink, and they use AI, to have a wide view of the entire transaction scenario, and they know they're intelligent enough to know about each transaction that is happening, and because they're aware of each transaction, they can find out any possible issues that might be, anything that can be red flagged. They can spot them and they can use those.
So looking at the implementation, looking at real-time payments, where does this take us? A lot of countries like India, Singapore, US, UK have already implemented this technology, but 24 more countries are exploring RTP right now and are planning to implement it in the next 3 to 5 year goal. So where does Mastercard fit in with this? With the acquisition of VocaLink, VocaLink helped Mastercard develop this architecture in the United States with the help of the clearinghouse, and we propose partnering with Payments Canada to develop this RTP infrastructure in Canada. So Canada is currently looking at developing this infrastructure and is planning to roll this out in early 2020 or in late 2019. So partnering with Payments Canada would be a great segue to enter into the Canadian market. And as we look at the graph, like a lot of small businesses and medium businesses, the main problem why they're not adapting to real-time payments is due to the lack of knowledge, more so than concerns of fraud. So we recommend having corporate training programs starting with USA, training corporations about the ease of use of real-time payments, and then moving to Canada to educate all corporations about how efficiently they can do business with this technology. One surprising thing is 42% of all businesses in US still use checks or very outdated technology. And 50% to around 50 to 60% of those businesses actually dislike using checks. So the main hurdle to RTP is just lack of awareness. So by corporate training programs, we just get into those markets and train people accordingly. And also having a global approach, a lot of emerging markets like Turkey are looking into this technology. So a 10-year goal would be looking into emerging markets and expanding them. We also did a return on investment analysis. We compared Mastercard with its biggest competitor, that's Visa. While Visa has a lot bigger operating income, the return on invested capital for Mastercard is huge. So on every invested capital, Mastercard makes around 63% compared to just 30%. And so this has huge investment opportunities for Mastercard and a huge value proposition for stakeholders and stockholders to invest in new investments globally. So looking at all these, we conclude that Mastercard, with the help of VocaLink, should really focus on the real-time payments technology, simply because of the industry progress in that direction, and also because of the help of central banks, and they could really exploit this technology with the help of AI.
Thank you.
So, thank you for the presentation and looking at the different aspects of the, you provided 3 alternative solutions. What is the framework that you were looking at in, and you had a decision matrix, but prior to that, was there an overriding framework that, or is this the decision matrix? The decision matrix is your framework?
Yeah, the decision matrix is our framework for the investment decision.
And then how did you come up with the scoring?
The scoring, so we base that on, so we've given these weights, you can see employee engagement, 10%, value creation, all that, and it's a weighted average.
And how did you come up with that?
The score?
No, both the weighting and the score, yes.
Well, the weighting and the scoring for these numbers are all arbitrary, unfortunately, because we didn't really have access to any sort of appendixes with the case, and we tried to find financial data. I mean, we could put in cost estimates of all these blockchains and things like that, but I don't think they'd be very accurate.
But we looked at secondary research, we did a lot of secondary research about where the industry is progressing, and then we placed those strands accordingly about how implementable these strategies are and which one would be most profitable.
So each of the areas up there, because this really seems to be the heart of responding to the desired business case. Can you elaborate a little bit on what metrics you would use or anything for each of those criteria?
Yeah, sure. So I touched on it a little bit, but sped through it a bit. So say employee engagement. If you're using real-time processing, it speeds up your transactions. You don't have to have someone sort of monitoring the transactions and things like that. It saves employees time on that so they can do more productive things, engage with customers, things like that. Value creation, it's sort of more about not just that specific purpose it's intended for, but what other things we can get from that. So for example, with blockchain, you can get information about new hacking trends, hacking patterns, and algorithms being used to attack your networks, and sort of develop your own countermeasures and counter security to counter that and learn from that and continuously keep improving your security. Speed to market, how easy it is to bring to the market. Virtual cards, super easy to make. You just have to generate different card numbers mostly. But something like RTP, the infrastructure is expensive, and it's still a relatively new thing. So just bringing that implementation will take at least 2 to 3 more years, according to our research. Reputational benefits, simple. If your network is safe, more people come into it, of course. And coming from 2 from India, 1 from Bangladesh, we can safely say that in our country, just using cards is not a thing. People don't trust cards. People still trust cash because they don't think cards are secure. That comes from a cultural perspective as well. And so if you can sort of target the newer generations with these technologies and entice them, maybe change the cultural norms, you have a huge market in Asia. And cost of implementation, RTP most expensive, virtual cards least expensive. And so based on our sort of somewhat arbitrary, a little bit of secondary research, we tried to sort of evaluate all of those without any sort of biases, and this is what we came up with.
And we also closely consider a profit statement in assigning values.
You picked solutions that are existing alternatives. Now, if you're looking at competitive advantages of business, and everybody's looking at all these alternatives that are known, how would you pick something that would be distinct and unique compared to and then also you're picking at something that's known, how would you evolve as market conditions change?
Okay. So yes, like you said, a lot of things are known, but we are trying to bring some more freshness into it. For example, VocaLink. There are a lot of RTP solutions out there. Why would someone use VocaLink, and how can we adapt it to the market? There's actually this new emerging technology that sort of has processing closer to the source of the data. So, for example, data processing is still mostly centralized. Data comes into a processing unit and there's an output. But there's this new emerging technology that's coming out. It's probably being patented right now. That would allow that processing to happen just at the point of input. So that decentralized system would save you a lot more time on processing. So things like that, VocalLink could potentially go into that, R&D into that, and sort of any form of progress is about taking something that's there and building upon it. It's a lot harder to just come up with something completely different. But I guess that's where Mastercard gets its edge, because they're involved in everything. They're thinking ahead. In fact, one of the biggest problems we had with this case, a lot of things we thought about were fantastic ideas. We dug into it. Turns out it existed. We thought about
Yeah, so something like false positives, which is a huge issue in business today, like having a transaction declined, and I think around 25 to 30% of consumers just switch their banks because of the frustration due to false positives. And MIT has developed an algorithm which uses AI to use that false, to just study behavioral patterns instead of just traditional methods and remove those false positives. And then we discovered that Mastercard already has Assurance IQ, which prevents that. So there's a lot of things that we looked into, but so coming up with an entirely new thing is kind of difficult in today's generation. So we specifically looked at RTPs because only 15 to 16 countries currently focus on it. And it's a huge potential in emerging markets, with around 25 to 30 countries looking to expand into this area in the next 3 to 5 years. And Mastercard already has a competency with VocalLink, which specializes in this business. And VocalLink, I think, during the time of the acquisition was valued at, I think, $900 million. So it's a huge company with a lot of specialization. So getting a first mover advantage in these emerging markets and tapping them before arrivals good. So that was a main goal.
It's more about the opportunities looking forward rather than just the existing technologies now.
Exactly.
And RTP, we feel, has the most potential going forward.
And what you have, what specializations you have, and leveraging them into untapped markets. That was the key framework we looked at.
Your financial analysis, you're looking at overall
Yes,
company
that was for the
return
overall
on
company.
invested capital. You didn't look at the specific project itself. So if you were to look at that analysis and say, I was going to apply it to this particular, how would you apply it?
So again, one difficulty which we stumbled into when evaluating the specific projects was just because RTPs in general have not been implemented yet in a lot of different countries. And so just estimating the cost of that technology is in billions. And also estimating benefits of AI cannot be quantified, right? So we just decided to look at the business as a whole instead of, so just customer satisfaction increases by say 30%. How would you quantify it, given that these things are actually happening right now? You can do a historical trend, but that would be 5 years later to see how many customers Mastercard has acquired by implementing that technology now. But doing that sort of analysis right now with future projections didn't really make sense to us. So instead, we just decided to value the whole business.
If you're looking at frameworks, you want something that's more generic, and here, you picked real-time processing. So if you looked at the case introduction, talked about fraud rules and risk thresholds. How would you apply that situation to this framework of real-time payments?
So one of the percentage of companies that regard various features of real-time payments that are important. So instant funds transfer is definitely one, but it's still third. And real-time payments add a lot of enhanced security and fraud controls. So it's just not instant payments, but a lot of fraud prevention that come along with real-time payments.
Because the way real-time payment works is based off real-time processing. It's not based on batch processing. So for example, if you have some sort of fraud going on, all that data stream is being continuously filtered and processed. It's not like batch processing where you look at the data from like 5 years ago and then look at it. So if there's a chance of fraud coming in, you can detect it just like that because that's how the processing system works. As soon as the data comes in, it's processed, the output is produced, stored, interpreted, analyzed, and then decisions are based out of that.
And speaking as far as the framework, we spent a lot of time just talking about which one should we go with, and we decided that it wouldn't be very effective just to recommend this may make generally in your workplace may make it smoother. So we decided we look at the last one, task specific. automation and say, okay, what critical things, what problems today can we hit? And that's how we came across these specific examples.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
For having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.